Good afternoon, friends. It's me, your friend Max Mogren, reporting live for you from beautiful Alpine, Wyoming, on a snowy Monday. This is Wake Up Wyoming for March 19th, 2018. We got a big show today, as usual. No shortage of shady dealings going on in this lovely world that we call home. So let's take a good look at it. Let's get right into it. Top story today, we're looking at bottled water. Two more big reasons to avoid bottled water if you can. Of course, here in the United States, a lot of the drinking water, a lot of the tap water is not safe to drink, not fit for human consumption. But bottled water, about the same sort of thing. What's up, Chase? Thanks for tuning in today. Check this out. Published on the 14th, last Wednesday. The World Health Organization launches a health review after microplastics found in 90% of bottled water. Researchers find levels of plastic fibers in popular bottled water brands could be twice as high as those found in tap water. So again, a lot of the tap water in the U.S. and around the world not fit for human consumption, but a lot of the bottled water isn't either. So best bet, distill your water, filter your water, do what you can to protect your health. The World Health Organization has announced a review into the potential risks of plastic in drinking water after a new analysis has found the world's most popular bottled water brands found that more than 90% contain tiny pieces of plastic. A previous study also found high levels of microplastics in tap water. In a new study analysis of 259 bottles from 19 locations in 9 countries across 11 different brands, found an average of 325 plastic particles for every liter of water being sold. In one bottle of Nestle Pure Life, concentrations were as high as 10,000 plastic pieces per liter of water. Of the 259 bottles tested, only 17 were free of plastic microparticles, according to the study. Thank you so much for tuning in. We got people shouting out from Rhode Island, Wisconsin, Georgia, Hawaii. Thank you so much for tuning in. H-Town. Carlito Amigo asking, what about seltzer? I don't know, Carlito. That's a great question. Interestingly, twice as much plastic found in bottled water as tap water. According to the new study, the most common type of plastic fragment found was polypropylene, the same type of plastic used to make bottle caps. The bottles analyzed were bought in the U.S., China, Brazil, India, Indonesia, Mexico, Lebanon, Kenya, and Thailand. Okay, so lots of great comments there. Thanks for tuning in. Good reason to avoid bottled water there if you can. It's incredibly wasteful, utterly absurd that we pay such exorbitant prices to drink water when we should be focused on making our own local tap water more fit for human consumption. And if you needed more proof there that you should avoid bottled water, coming from our friends over at Naked Capitalism today. Bottled water brought to you by fracking. The link between fracking and the bottled water industry is one more reason to take back the tap. This article, produced by Winona Hunter, Executive Director of the National Advocacy Organization Food and Water Watch, originally published at Alternet, not the best source, admittedly, but they make some pretty good points here. The new Food and Water Watch report, Take Back the Tap, the Big Business Hustle of Bottled Water, details the deceit and trickery of the bottled water industry. Here's one more angle to consider. The bottled water business is closely tied to fracking. The report reveals that the majority of bottled water is municipal tap water, a common resource captured in plastic bottles and resold at an astonishing markup, as much as 2,000 times the price of tap. And even 4 times the price of gasoline, right? What a ripoff. Besides being a ripoff, there's plenty more to loathe about the corporate water scam. The environmental impacts of pumping groundwater, especially in drought-prone areas, the plastic junk fouling up our waterways and oceans, and the air pollution created as petrochemical plants manufacture the materials necessary for making plastic bottles filled with overpriced tap water. Kevin Brewer chiming in, you mean my tap water on fire is not normal? No. Dale Sprang with a good comment there. Wichita, Kansas, fluoride and pharmaceuticals and narcotics in the water supply, complete poisoning of this entire country, this whole country, right? Pretty disturbing. You know what I do? I've got a, well, I'll show you. I've got a water filter here. You know, what do you do? What do you do? I got one of these Berkeys. Supposedly removes fluoride. It's got a couple filters, you know, big filters built in. And I put normal tap water in there, hoping that it will keep me safer. But I don't know. William Braid really pushing the pit vipers there. James Scammon chiming in. I make my own water. I have a still in the basement. Right? Probably a pretty good move. With how polluted the water supply is all over the world today. Sad to see. But so this article goes on and on. But perhaps the biggest problem is where we get all this plastic in the first place, right? No shortage of plastic bottles polluting the planet. Many of the raw materials used to create those plastic bottles come from fracking. In addition to air and water pollution, the fracking boom has delivered an abundant supply of the hydrocarbon ethane, which is used in petrochemical manufacturing to create ethylene, which is turned into plastic. Goes on and on how, you know, fracking is making these plastic producing chemicals so much cheaper. And yeah, the corporate water business is a costly scam that affects our air, water, and climate. Let's not forget about geoengineering, of course. It robs communities of a resource that is a public good and must be treated as one, and relies heavily on dirty fossil fuels to produce and transport a product that it sells at an extravagant markup. It rakes in billions of dollars while our public tap water infrastructure that these companies benefit from remains in desperate need of federal funding to provide all Americans with access to clean, affordable drinking water. So, there you go. Yep, moving on, reading the comments. In the news today, this is kind of interesting. Published yesterday over at The Guardian, our second headline of the day. No CEO should earn 1,000 times more than a regular employee. For the first time ever, U.S. corporations have begun reporting pay ratio data, and a movement is building to crack down on companies that don't share the wealth, right? Cool if this takes hold here and continues growing as a movement. But long story short, now corporations are required to showcase how much their employees get paid compared to the CEOs. CEO of Marathon Petroleum, Gary Heminger, took home an astonishing 935 times more pay than his typical employee in 2017. In other words, one of Marathon's gas station workers would have to toil more than 9 centuries to make as much as Heminger grabbed in just 1 year. It goes on and on. These revelations come thanks to a new federal regulation that requires publicly traded U.S. corporations to disclose for the first time ever how much their CEOs are making compared with their median workers. The disclosures are just now starting to flow in. The new ratios offer a benchmark for corporate greed that exposes exactly which firms are sharing the wealth their employees create and which aren't. Knowledge we can use to impose consequences on the corporations doing the most to make the United States more unequal. What sort of consequences? In Oregon, the city of Portland has adopted what the economist Branko Milankovic has labeled the first tax that targets inequality as such. Portland's new levy imposes a 10% business tax surcharge on companies with top execs making over 100 times their median worker pay, and a 20% surcharge on firms with pay gaps that stretch past 250 times. City officials in San Francisco are bringing a similar measure before voters this November. At the state level, lawmakers in Minnesota, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Illinois, and Massachusetts are getting into the Pay Ratio Tax Act as well, and California as well. So there's a little silver lining there. You know, it sucks that we live in a corporate oligarchy, a techno-fascist oligarchy, where the rich get richer, the poor get fucked over, can't even get clean water out of the tap. But at least there's a little backlash against that at the moment. Great comments here. Let's see. Amber Lee chiming in there. Toys R Us corporate hacks getting millions of dollars in bonuses in the face of bankruptcy while employees are left to scrounge, right? Yep, true story. Great comments. Moving on here. In other news, coming from our friends at Wolf Street, the U.S. gross national debt spiked $1.2 trillion in 6 months and hit $21 trillion. These dang trillions are flying by so fast they're hard to see. The U.S. gross national debt jumped by $72.8 billion in one day on Thursday, the Treasury Department reported Friday afternoon. This March 16th is a historic date of gloomy proportions because on this date, the U.S. gross national debt punched through the 21 trillion mark and reached $21.03 trillion. Here's the thing. On September 7, 2017, a little over 6 months ago, just before Congress suspended the debt ceiling, the gross national debt stood at $19.84 trillion. In those 6 months, 132 reporting days to be precise, the gross national debt spiked by $1.186 trillion. I tell you, these dang trillions are flying by so fast they're hard to see. And we wonder, what was that? Where did it go? Whatever it was and wherever it went, it added 6% to our gross national debt in just 6 months. So much for old Trumpo draining the swamp and cutting the fat from the federal budget, huh? And with 2017 GDP at $19.74 trillion in current dollars, the gross national debt now amounts to 106.4% of GDP. There you can see the spike recently, those flat spots, debt ceilings. Notice how it spikes really abruptly right after the debt ceilings are breached when they say, oh, you know what? Well, we spent all that money anyway, so now we're just going to go deeper and deeper and deeper in debt to the global banking cartel. This chart shows the changes in the gross national debt on a rolling 132 reporting day basis going back to 2011. You can see in 2018, national debt spiking incredibly. And this is happening in a booming economy, or so they say, when the debt shouldn't increase at all as booming tax receipts would match or more than match government expenditures. But hey, not in this brave new world. Despite the boom times, and they're likely as good as they're going to get, the government is already forecasting record issuance of new Treasury debt in order to fund the surging deficits. And the market will have to absorb this debt just as the Fed has started to unload treasuries from its balance sheet. So, just a heads up there. National debt on the rise. Of course, who do we owe that money to? We owe it to the global banking cartel. Lots of great comments. Moving along here. Facebook in the crosshairs again. March 16th. You know, they're talking about this Trump consultant harvesting data. No big surprise there. Facebook down about 6-7% on the day. So good to see Facebook taking a hit, I guess. Note here, it's kind of funny. You can see clearly the market is manipulated when they're, you know, look at this spike in price this morning at 9:40 a.m. It was $175.99 and it bumped up to $185, a $10 increase, 5% increase over the course of just a few short minutes, 5 minutes, then right back where it was. Pretty clear evidence of markets being manipulated, but that's no big surprise to us here at Wake Up Wyoming. Thank you so much for tuning in. TechCrunch going after Facebook too. This published 16 hours ago. Powell with a good comment there on the economy. And then the New York Times jumping on the bandwagon, bashing on Facebook. Of course, I'm no big fan of Facebook myself. And the Guardian also bashing on Facebook today. Interestingly, though, you know, you think Mark Zuckerberg is going to go to jail for this? You think Mark Zuckerberg is going to lose his billions? No, they're going to use these attacks on Facebook and other social media companies to continue the censorship crackdown on independent news outlets like myself, like you. When you try to share something, you know, you try to share this video, and I'm so grateful that you do. We try to build a big audience, but we can't, even though we're on a page with 530,000 likes, can't seem to build an audience of more than 100 viewers. Maybe I'm just that boring. Maybe people don't like a long format news analysis and media literacy show. I don't really know, but I do know that the Facebook algorithms already censor the independent media. And if this big push to attack Facebook in the mainstream media continues, the crackdown on independent media is going to continue, that's for sure. Moving along here, other disturbing tech news. Raleigh cops, that's Raleigh, North Carolina, are investigating crime by getting Google to reveal the identity of every mobile user within acres of the crime scene. Public records requests have revealed that on at least 4 occasions, the Raleigh-Durham police obtained warrants forcing Google to reveal the identities of every mobile user within acres of a crime scene, sweeping up the personal information of thousands of people in a quest to locate a single perp. The warrants came with gag orders that banned Google from disclosing their existence. In their request for the warrants, local prosecutors say that they don't even believe the warrants are needed to get this information, but since Google insists, they're willing to get them. The cops insist that this approach balances the public's Fourth Amendment rights with their need to fight crimes. Only one of the crimes in which police use this dragnet technique has had an arrest. It's not clear if this arrest was the result of data from Google. So there we see local cops doing something that we know the alphabet soup agencies like the NSA, CIA, and FBI do regularly, monitoring all Americans' communications, their movements via their smartphones. Of course, what does smartphone mean? It means self-monitoring and recording technology. Just a heads up there. If you ever wanted to say, fight in a revolution to overthrow the corrupt corporatocracy ruling our government, ruling our country, probably not a good idea to have one of these in your pocket while you're doing it. Moving along, moving along. Laura Christine Wintrow, you're driving, but you're plugged in my speakers. Hey, everyone. Laura, thank you so much for tuning in. Please don't text and drive, though. I would really hate if you got into an accident because you're commenting on the video. Great to have you here. Thank you so much for listening in, but please be careful out there on the road. You know, these smartphones are designed to be so addicting that people can't even put them down while they're in the car. So please don't drink and drive. Don't text and drive. A public service announcement from your friends here at Wake Up News. Moving along, coming from Truth Out, published on the 15th. You know, we've had the big never again, hashtag never again, hashtag enough, hashtag March for Our Lives, coordinated, sanctioned walkout across the country. The big march coming up on the 24th. Is that a Friday or a Saturday? I think it's a Friday. And maybe it's a Saturday. But pretty good article here. While many students held to a general demand for more gun laws, others went different routes. For example, students with juntos and the Philadelphia Student Union called for divestment from in-school policing and greater investment in mental and emotional health services. They demanded the creation of restorative justice programs and measures aimed at protecting students and families from ICE, right? The Immigration Enforcement Agency, in addition to gun control measures that do not result in targeted policing of black and brown bodies. Students in New York Central Park East High School also called for the decriminalization of black and brown students in our schools. And in Chicago, students at a number of schools refused to simplify the violence they face in their communities, right? The Parkland shooting, which appears to be a staged event, with a lot of inconsistencies in the official story, the official timeline making no sense, the footage they've released contradicting the official story, no real explanation as to why the cops and the FBI were notified about this kid at least 38, perhaps 45 times before the shooting. No explanation as to why the cops were told to stand down and stay out of the building. No explanation why the emergency personnel, first responders, weren't allowed into the building. No explanation why the protocols for a code red lockdown of the school were violated when they told the kids to evacuate due to a pulled fire alarm after the code red lockdown was initiated. So no shortage of holes in that story, but and inconsistencies and strange instances there. But the nationwide staged movement where they never listened to the kids about anything, but all of a sudden, former FBI agent's son starts calling for gun control. Next thing you know, there's a coordinated nationwide protest movement about gun control. But cool to see some of these kids standing up and actually saying, you know what? Gun control isn't going to solve the problem. Some of those who participated in the walkout were quite blunt about how criminalization fails them, such as a student at Chicago's Sullivan High School whose sign simply read, "Gun control is not the answer." Students in Englewood, a chronically underserved neighborhood, uplifted the memories of Laquan McDonald and Ronald Ronnie Man Johnson, who were both gunned down by police. right? So here we have the situation in Parkland. This kid here holding up a sign, gun control is not the answer, right? There are a lot of things we could address if we want to talk about making the United States a happier, healthier, safer place to live. And taking guns out of the hands of the law-abiding citizenry is probably not going to solve all our problems. And given that our own government is literally the world's largest arms dealer and the world's largest terrorist organization, waging wars all over the world on false pretenses, probably not a good idea to give them a complete monopoly on firearms in this country. Angie Eagle chiming in, a lot of kids are being forced to walk out and choose political sides. Daniel Reichert chiming in, what a sham. Powell chiming in, I empathize with those communities. And yeah, there we go. Moving on here. So, you know, the Parkland situation stinks. I don't think the kids are falling for it too much, and I hope you don't either. Coming from citylab.com, this is kind of fascinating. America's Growing Guard Labor Force, published by Richard Florida on March 13th. Many large urban areas in the U.S. now have more guard labor than teachers. In a 2014 New York Times op-ed, economists Samuel Bowles and Arjun Jayadev documented the startling rise of guard labor in America. According to their broad definition, the United States employs more guard labor, including private security guards, police officers, prison and court officials, members of the armed forces, and civilian employees of the military and weapons producers, than teachers. They noted that the U.S. is unique in its massive guard labor numbers, with a proportion of guard labor 4 times as high as Sweden, twice as high as in Germany, and considerably higher than in the UK or Italy. So there we go. Goes on and on. In 2017, across the nation as a whole, there were 2.9 million guards out of a workforce of under, you know, that's 1% of the workforce at least, and 3.6 million teachers. A guard to teacher ratio of 0.8. Over the decade 2007 to 2017, however, the U.S. added more than twice as many guards as teachers. During this time period, the number of guards grew by 5% compared to just a 2% increase for teachers, and private security guards alone increased by a whopping 11%. David Coco Riga says, Max, I do it because you need to smile more. David, thanks. I'll start smiling right now. Appreciate that. I do need to smile more. You know, we might as well enjoy our lives on this beautiful blue planet of ours. Despite all the corruption and pollution and seemingly senselessness, the inertia that has our civilization seemingly careening towards the cliff edge. But you know what? What a ride. Happy to be here. Happy you all are here tuning in. Moving on. America as a whole has nearly as many guards as teachers, and in many cases, guards already outnumber teachers. Even with its huge number of guards, America has by far the most gun deaths in the developed world. It's patently obvious that America's solution of adding more and more guards does not address the root of the violence epidemic. The money we waste on guards or training school staff to be guards could be much better spent improving our schools, developing our young people, and enacting and enforcing laws that are proven to prevent violence in the first place. Okay, so this one, obviously a pro-gun control argument here from Richard Florida, senior editor at The Atlantic. But, you know, he makes some good points there. It's pretty absurd to have that many people. Interesting perspective coming from our friends over there at Truth Dig. We need Dirty Harry, talking about the police and the alphabet soup agencies really failing to do their jobs, notably at Parkland and other school shootings. I learned a few new things about the Columbine shooting I wasn't aware of from this article. He would not have hesitated. There would be no going back for bulletproof vests or better weapons, waiting for SWAT, or following police protocol to protect themselves first. Whether a school building or a movie theater, a riot, or any situation in which every second lost could mean another child lost, he would take the risk of entering. Risking his life to save others was doing his job. With lives at stake, he never waited for backup. He did his job. Who's that? Dirty Harry. Of course, he's a fictionalized cop. But, you know, this makes a pretty good point. You know, the cops stood down. There were orders that they shouldn't enter the building. I'll keep reading. And on February 14th at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Florida, he would not have squatted outside in safety while shots were being fired or ordered police to stay 500 feet away and not enter. That's right. That order was given. Do not enter the building. It's in the 9/11 calls. He would not have endured 11 minutes of shooting before entering, allowing the slaughter of 17 people, plus serious injuries to at least 14 others. He would have confronted the shooter and cried out, "Over here, punk. Do you feel lucky?" At Virginia Tech, he would have rushed in, and the death toll would not have been 32. At Columbine High School, he would have entered with a gun in one hand while using the other to sip from his cup of morning coffee. It goes on and on. I just want to make a note here about the Columbine shooting. Shocking here. You know, we talk about how absurd the official response was to Parkland, how absurd it is that they were notified that this kid was a problem. The police called to his home approximately 40 times over the course of 7 years, and yet this kid was able to buy a gun and shoot up a school, allegedly. But interesting to read here. On April 20th, 1999, that's when I was in high school, two students, Eric Horrells and Doug Keebold, entered Columbine High School in Jefferson County, Colorado, to carry out a shooting massacre, killing 12 students and a teacher and wounding 24 other people before committing suicide. After a failed attempt to blow up the school cafeteria, they entered the school's west entrance and began firing at around 11:20 a.m. A deputy sheriff arrived and fired back, but did not enter the building. Instead, he radioed for assistance. Dirty Harry also might have radioed, but he would have gone in and ended it before help arrived. 10 minutes later, by 11:30 a.m., several deputy sheriffs and police officers arrived. They helped evacuate students. One even saw a shooter pass by a window. Law enforcement, fearing booby traps and setups, chose not to go in, despite knowing that the shooting was continuing and aimed at students needing rescue. Police safety came before that of students who were brought up watching Alan Ladd movies that led them to believe police would risk their lives to protect them. A SWAT team arrived by noon, so that's 40 minutes after the shooting began, but did not enter until about 2:30 p.m. Did you know that? Columbine, 99. SWAT team arrived at noon, but didn't enter until 2:30 p.m. It wasn't until 3:25 p.m. that the SWAT team finally made it into the school library. By then, the shooting had long since stopped, and with the self-execution of the killers, allegedly, of course. You know, we don't really know what happened, because just like the Parkland shooting, just like the Las Vegas shooting, there are no shortage of holes in official stories surrounding Columbine as well. Earlier, Coach Dave Sanders had posted a sign on a window, "I am bleeding to death." It was ignored. Sanders died nearly 3 hours later from blood loss, surrounded by about 30 terrified students. His last words were reported by a student to be, "Tell my family I love them." So there's your tax dollars at work. There are the police that, you know, we're supposed to have protecting us, not even entering a building in the midst of a horrible shooting situation. That's enough about the school shootings and all that, the gun control thing. It all seems like a big setup to me. Putin's election takes him one step closer to becoming Russian leader for life, coming from the Washington Post, published today. No shortage of propaganda there. You know, Russia all over the news here lately. We'll save that one a little later. You know, Russia, it's so common to blame Russia for everything. Instead of taking a good look at the other problems, you know, the rigged elections in the United States, they've been rigged for a long time. Well, they just blame Russia. You know, we'll blame Russia for everything. Oh, the election didn't go the way that the oligarchy hoped it would. We'll blame Russia. Some people got poisoned on a park bench in the UK. We'll blame Russia. And this article published on Friday by Chris Martinson over there at peakprosperity.com makes some really good points about how the media will demonize Russia, will create this boogeyman. You know, they're trying to put us back into a new Cold War with Russia, risking, you know, basically poking the bear that is Russia with this propaganda. Ralph Shelton chiming in, but is Russia a good example to follow? Absolutely not. You know, Russia is just as corrupt as the U.S. I'm certainly not saying that we should, you know, revere Vladimir Putin and hold him up as the epitome of a democratically elected leader of a free country. But, you know, we don't really have democratically elected leaders here either. And this whole thing kind of reeks of Orwellian 1984 newspeak tactics, where whenever something bad happens, we blame Russia. This is a really good read here. Chris Martinson takes it back to the WMDs in the Iraq War. Propaganda used to demonize Saddam Hussein and used to justify entering the Iraq War, killing millions of people. But a really good point here, they try to portray this like Russia, oh, it's pretty clear that this was Russian nerve gas carried out by Russia in the UK, but there's really no proof there. I'll paste it in there. And interestingly too, they act like, the way they put it. Well, here, Theresa May said, it is now clear that Mr. Skripal and his daughter were poisoned with a military-grade nerve agent of a type developed by Russia, Ms. May said in the House of Commons. The government has concluded that it is highly likely that Russia was responsible for the act against Sergei and Yulia Skripal. She said that either the poisoning was a direct act of the Russian state against our country or that Moscow had lost control of its nerve agency and had allowed it to get into the hands of others. But what they don't really mention here is that this nerve agent is actually pretty easy to produce in any laboratory that's properly equipped, and that the Russians actually started cleaning up and dismantling the facility they used to make this stuff back in '99. What a responsible media organization, which many of my closest friends continue to insist the New York Times should do in its coverage, is point out that many other world players could easily and with reasonably doubt have had access to Novichok, the nerve agent. Objective and balanced reporting would have done that. It goes on and on. It's a good read. Key thing here, they're going to blame Russia for everything. They want us in this perpetual state of fear. They want us to think that Russia is the enemy and we need to be concerned about Russians influencing U.S. elections, when in reality a much bigger concern is our own corrupt oligarchy controlling our election process, right? Moving along here, moving along. Speaking of people who died under unusual circumstances, the hacker who turned in Chelsea Manning, aka Bradley Manning, is dead at 37. Julian Assange delighted. Adrian Lamo, best known as the computer hacker who exposed Army whistleblower Chelsea, then Bradley Manning, died Friday at the age of 37. Interesting to see. How do you die at 37? Why did this guy die? Good question. I don't know. If somebody wants to give me some more info on that topic, I would love it. Joshua Lemoy, back to Putin's election here. He says, what are your feelings on the notion of Xi Jinping's no-term limit as president of China, chairman of everything? Right, it's scary, isn't it? It's scary to have, Vladimir Putin. Now he's set up to be the leader of Russia for like 26 years straight. Joshua Lemoy chiming in there about Russia, similar situations there. It's a mess. No shortage of messes in the world today. Speaking of messes, coming from our friend Tyler Durden over there at Zero Hedge, published on Saturday, excuse me. Russia claims the U.S. deploys warships for imminent attack on Syria, trains militants for false flag attack. Again, I'm no Russian sympathizer. I don't think that Vladimir Putin is a stand-up dude, but I do get tired of the United States continually wasting our money, blowing up people all over the world, meddling in affairs that we really, we should get our own house in order before we try to police the entire world. And this is a prime example of that. Last April, in one of the Trump administration's first diplomatic ventures, the U.S. fired 59 Tomahawk missiles on Syria in stated retaliation for the latest alleged chemical attack by the Assad regime. The same false flag excuse, which was used by the U.S. to officially enter the conflict back in 2013, when military tensions between the U.S. and Russia nearly resulted in a regional war. Well, it appears that Assad is a relentless glutton for punishment, because not even a year later, the Washington Post reported 2 weeks ago that the U.S. is considering a new military action against Syria for, what else? Retaliation against Assad's latest alleged chemical attack, which took place several weeks earlier. How do we know Assad and apparently Russia was behind the attack? We don't. In fact, former Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, in a moment of bizarre honesty, admitted that he really doesn't know much at all about whoever conducted the attacks. But hey, just like it is highly likely that Russia poisoned a former Russian double agent in the UK with no proof yet, so it is highly likely that a clearly irrational Assad was once again behind an attack which he knew would provoke violent and aggressive retaliation by the U.S. and once again destabilize his regime. And so we now wait for that flashing red headline saying that U.S. ships in the Mediterranean have launched a missile attack on Syria, just like a year ago. Only this time, Russia, which is allied with the Assad regime, is not planning to be on the defensive. And according to Russia's defense ministry, U.S. instructors are currently training militants to stage false flag chemical attacks in South Syria, i.e. the catalyst that will be used to justify the U.S. attack on Assad. The incidents, the ministry said, will be used as a pretext for airstrikes on Syrian government troops and infrastructure. There you go. Henry gets it done. Thanks for tuning in. Powell, thanks for all the great comments. So, you know, the Russians in Syria, with permission from the Syrians, helping the Syrians out in this war. And it seems like Uncle Sam is committing a false flag attack. Good comment there. No, the USA would never do such a thing like that. Laugh out loud. Speaking of the media, which we really can't trust, you know, here at Wake Up Women, we're all about critically analyzing the media. Again, I don't think that the Russians, I don't think Vladimir Putin's a good dude any more than I think Donald Trump's a good dude. But we're looking at our own problems here. And one of the problems we have is this nasty tendency in the mainstream media to use former CIA operatives, CIA apologists, for false commentary, published by Mel Goodman. MSNBC prides itself for progressive reporting on national security issues, but continues to use apologists for the CIA in reporting on key intelligence issues. The network's reliance on former Deputy Director of the CIA, John McLaughlin, is an excellent example of the skewed and tailored information that it offers to viewers on matters dealing with the CIA. McLaughlin, a former colleague of Mel's, this guy worked at the CIA, Mel Goodman. McLaughlin, a former colleague of Mel's at the CIA, who he remembers as an amateur musician, regularly pulls the wool over the eyes of such MSNBC veterans as Andrea Mitchell. It goes on and on. You know, they bring these guys on the TV, and they're not really, you know, they're obviously very biased because they are literally intelligence operatives. McLaughlin's role at the CIA is not as well known as it should be. Although CIA Director George Tenet is infamous for telling President George W. Bush in December 2002 that it would be a slam dunk to provide intelligence to take the American people to support the invasion of Iraq, it was McLaughlin who actually delivered the slam dunk briefing at the White House in January 2003. So 15 years later, this guy is pimping CIA agendas on the major networks. He was the guy who helped get us into the Iraq War in the first place 15 years ago. The briefing was based on the phony national intelligence estimate that McLaughlin endorsed in October 2002, along with the infamous white paper that the CIA delivered to the Congress on the eve of the vote to go to war against Iraq. The white paper was a violation of the CIA's charter that prohibits the use of information to influence public opinion. It goes on and on. More recently, McLaughlin led the CIA's attempt to discredit the authoritative Senate Intelligence Committee report on the CIA's program of torture and abuse. Like the white paper in 2002, the CIA report violated the CIA charter against influencing public opinion in the United States. In the report titled Rebuttal, the CIA response to the Senate Intelligence Committee's study of its detention and interrogation program, McLaughlin was joined by such CIA apologists as George Tenet, former directors Porter Gross, and Michael Hayden, and former Deputy Director Michael Morrell. There were other apologists involved in the project, such as Philip Mudd, who comments regularly on CNN, and Jose A. Rodriguez, the godfather of torture and abuse, who was permitted to publish a book that denied there was torture and abuse. Yeah. So a good read there by Melvin A. Goodman, Senior Fellow at the Center for International Policy and Professor of Government at Johns Hopkins University, former CIA analyst. I'll go ahead and paste that one in there. If you're not familiar with Operation Mockingbird, this really shouldn't be a big surprise here. that the CIA, despite what it says in their charter that they're not supposed to influence public opinion, well, they've been doing it for a very long time. Operation Mockingbird was an alleged large-scale program of the U.S. CIA that began in the early 1950s and attempted to manipulate news media for propaganda purposes. Okay, well, they're still doing it today. Still doing it today. This is actually a pretty good read over at the Hill. Time for the U.S. to end democracy promotion flim-flams. In this era when they're always going after Russia for potentially influencing our election. It turns out, as the CIA CIA Chief James Woolsey openly admitted not that long ago, the United States does this regularly. I'll read you a little of this. Democracy promotion has long been one of the U.S. government's favorite foreign charades. The Trump administration's proposal to slash funding for democratic evangelism is being denounced as if it were the dawn of a new dark age. But this is a welcome step to draining a noxious swath of the Washington swamp. Okay, I don't agree with everything this guy's saying, but he makes some good points. 19th century humorist Josh Billings quipped, "A fanatic is someone who does what the Lord would do if he knew the facts of the matter." Similarly, the U.S. government intervenes to rig elections in case foreign voters don't know the facts of the matter. The U.S. has interfered, usually covertly, in more than 80 foreign elections since World War II to boost its preferred candidates. Former CIA Chief James Woolsey was asked last month on Fox News whether the U.S. government was continuing to meddle and mess around in other people's election. Woolsey replied with a smile and said, "Only for a very good cause, in the interests of democracy." Obviously, democracy is ill-served if any U.S. preferred candidates lose. Nowadays, the National Endowment for Democracy, aka NED, is the flagship for U.S. political meddling abroad, and Trump proposes to slash its budget by 60%, from $170 million to $67 million. While Congress created the agency in 1983, it prohibited NED and its grantees from directly aiding foreign political candidates, but that law restrains NED as effectively as the Fourth Amendment's restriction on warrantless searches leashes the NSA. NED has been caught interfering in elections in France, Panama, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Czechoslovakia, Poland, and many other nations. NED's operatives helped spark bloody coup attempts in Venezuela and Haiti. Their efforts also helped topple the elected government in the Ukraine in 2014 and ignite the ongoing civil war. The CIA and NED tag team to worsen the biggest U.S. foreign policy catastrophe of this century. After the CIA covertly bankrolled pro-U.S. factions for the Iraqi parliament elections in 2005, NED President Carl Gershman hailed the result as one of the greatest events in the history of democracy. But the animosity fanned by that rigged election helped spur a catastrophic civil war in Iraq, which vastly increased the death toll for American soldiers. Okay, it goes on and on. I'll paste it in there. But the key thing here, anytime the mainstream media is telling you how Russia influenced our election, just bear in mind that old Uncle Sam has a history of influencing elections all over the world. And if you really want to dig deep on the topic, it seems like our own elections are not really that trustworthy. So when they tell you they're out there spreading freedom and democracy, just look in the mirror and realize that we don't really have freedom and democracy here in the United States. It's more of a techno-fascist oligarchy. On to business news. Stock slump as Facebook hits tech. Of course, Facebook in the crosshairs, down 7% today. Bonds recover, markets wrap. Gold gaining for the first time in 4 days. Dow tumble tops 400 points. NASDAQ falls the most in 6 weeks. Let's see how the markets are doing right now. The Dow down 440 points on the day, or 1.77%. If we look at the last month, you can see it's been a rocky ride. It sure looks like this blow-off top bubble has reached its peak, specifically on January 26th at a market high of 26,616. And it's been pretty much all downhill since then. Looking at the last year, kind of looks like a bubble to me. Looking at the last 5 years, it really looks like a bubble to me. And looking at the history there, you can see the crash back in 2008. It was at 14,000, dropped to 6,600. a loss of over 50%. And it's just been happy days are here again, boom time since then, despite the fact that the average American's really not doing any better. Wages have not increased. No shortage of money printed by the central banking cartel, but how much of that has made it into the pockets of your average American? Not much. So there's your stock market news. Cryptocurrencies have been taking a solid beating for months now, since the market cap hit about 830 billion in early January. Now, it's been this last couple weeks, the markets have been getting hit huge. Why there's a big boost in the crypto markets today, I don't really know. It doesn't make too much sense. But you can see across the board, everything has gone up between 10 and 50%. So there's your crypto news today. We live in a speculative casino of a global economy, and the crypto markets are no exception to that. Lightheartedly, on the topic of cryptocurrency, if you're not aware, John McAfee, the guy behind McAfee Antivirus, very outspoken, said he would eat his own genitals on national TV if Bitcoin wasn't worth at least $1 million per coin by the end of 2020. Is he going to have to heat his own genitals? I don't know. Famously, McAfee pledged to, and he's not making this up, eat his own dick if Bitcoin isn't at least $1 million per coin by the end of 2020. Not just eat it privately like most of us would, but on national television, whatever that means. The end of 2020 seems like a million years from now, particularly if you're waiting for the next presidential election, but it's only about 1,000 days away. And in order for McAfee to not have to eat his own genitals, Bitcoin will have to go up 0.5% a day, every day, from now until then. There you can see that's where he made the prediction. Again, Bitcoin spiked up there to close to $20,000 a coin before taking a huge hit and then rebounding. What's it going to do long term? I don't really know. Are cryptocurrencies the answer to our problems, or are they just another scam foisted upon us by the global banking cartel? I don't really know. But I do know a whole lot about geoengineering, and this is an interesting video here that Matt Landman posted in Stop Geoengineering Tucson 2018. That's an anti-geoengineering summit. This is a prime example of the propaganda that is foisted upon us by the mainstream media on the topic of climate change and geoengineering, talking about extreme weather events becoming more ferocious, more expensive. And they take it to Harvard, where they talk to David Keith and his buddies. There's David Keith. They're talking, look at that. In their footage there, they show these guys launching a balloon for the sake of doing a limited experiment on geoengineering. Let's see if I can find that again. I want to screen cap that. That's kind of funny. But of course, in the background there, while they're launching this balloon, there's very clear evidence of geoengineering. There you go. So there's David Keith and his buddies launching a small weather balloon in order to do a little geoengineering experiment. While in the sky overhead, you can see very clear evidence of humans affecting the climate in more ways than just CO2. When airplanes create trails like this, it creates cirrus clouds. Cirrus clouds trap heat, drastically affecting our weather and climate. But the propagandists make it out like geoengineering is just this pie in the sky solution that only a few really smart people at Harvard are even thinking about now. And it could be our last hope to save us from catastrophic climate change brought on by CO2. The mainstream never mentions the fact that the weather has been used as a weapon for a very long time. We're over there at weathermodificationhistory.com. Back in 1972, City Morning Herald reporting the outcry about the ongoing weather war in Vietnam, where the U.S. military was using the weather as a weapon. Okay, this was almost 50 years ago now. Well, they started doing it more than 50 years ago. So the notion that we haven't been using the weather as a weapon, the notion that we haven't been experimenting in large-scale weather modification programs, aka geoengineering efforts, for literally decades is utterly absurd. But the mainstream You know, they'll never mention this. You'll never see an article in the mainstream press nowadays. Go back 46 years, you can find no shortage of them from all over the world about, you know, documented covert operations where the weather was used as a weapon. And nowadays, the mainstream media never touches it. Of course, what's going on in the world today? Well, Venezuela, published 3 days ago by Reuters. You know, Venezuela's been having a real hard time lately. They've experienced hyperinflation. Their country's going to shit. People are starving in the streets. And they're beginning power rationing as a drought causes severe outages. My guess would be that perhaps the drought in Venezuela is in part due to intentional weather modification programs affecting their local climate. Venezuela imposed electricity rationing this week in 6 western states as the crisis-hit country's creaky power grid suffered from a drought that has reduced water levels in key reservoirs needed to run hydroelectric power generators. Okay, really important to note that, really important to stay aware of that. The fact that weather weaponry is kind of like nuclear weaponry, except it's even better from the perspective of the globalist elites because you can do it with plausible deniability and it doesn't leave a bunch of nasty radiation behind. If you want to cause extreme turmoil in a country, you just cause a drought, you just cause a flood, you just steer a hurricane over there like we saw in Puerto Rico about 6 months ago, and you can totally screw up a country. You can totally screw up their entire situation there with the weather modification. And on a similar vein, a little lighthearted, in China, they're proposing skyscraper-sized air purifiers to suck away China's pollution. This is a 60-meter-high smog-sucking chimney in the northern city of Xi'an. It cost $2 million to build. Seems like a pretty good deal to me. And around $30,000 in annual running costs to suck pollution out of the sky. Strange. Let's check with the comments here. Then we're going to get into, oh, Josh Lamoy wants me to link to that video from The Economist. Yeah, I can do that. Let's see. Facebook. I'll try to find that. Matt Lamon, great anti-geoengineering activist. He is, they're putting on this summit down in Tucson, Arizona. The 3rd annual Stop Geoengineering Summit is going to be in Tucson this year. Let's see if I can find that video for you. You can see Matt, very active, very well received, very prolific. Here we go. Here's a link to that video. It's posted in the Stop Geoengineering Summit Tucson 2018 page. So do check that one out. I just pasted that one in for you. Let's see. So there's that video. Checking out the comments here. Denise with a great comment as always. Some really sick, demented folks. Demonic. Demonic indeed, isn't it? Let's see. Henry gets it done. Chime in. Steaming is the new Facebook. DTube is the new YouTube. DuckDuckGooness. Is it Goose or Gooness? Is the new Goo. Gone is the new Google. Decentralize yourself. Henry, thanks for that. I got to start working on that. Of course, I know if I go over to Steam It and try to build an audience, you know, I got 62 viewers right now. I'm pretty stoked that all you are here listening to me try to share the news. Thank you so much for tuning in. But, you know, I can't build an audience that big over at Steam It yet. On that news, let's get into the scopes. Again, I don't really buy into the horoscopes. I don't really put too much stock in the horoscopes, but it's a great way to interact with all you at the end of the show. David Coco Rigo Sedano, looking for Cancer, coming at you, brother. 4-star day. Emphasize your ideas and your ability to take the lead. Someone close to you does not appreciate your efforts. You could be too tired of this person's complaints to remain restrained. Choose your words with care and be ready for a strong reaction. And tonight, David, visit with a friend. Geo Foles, looking for Leo. Good to see you, Geo. As always, 4-star day for you, sir. Keep the big picture in mind. You seem reasonable to many people, but they often wonder where you're coming from. You are able to see what others miss. You'll want to consider sharing more of your insights. Tonight, loved ones know where you are coming from. So there you go. April Bosa, what's up, April? Good to see you again. Hope you're doing all right out there in California. Taurus, I'm Taurus too. Taurus too. Let's see how we're doing today, according to the stars. 4-star day for us. A contrary partner could have you in fits over the best way to proceed. You would prefer to head in your own direction. You'll gain a sudden insight about what you should do. Even if it isn't what you want to do, take action and clear up a problem. Tonight, nap, then decide. Thank you so much for tuning in. Tony Ramsey, Virgo, coming at you. Thank you for tuning in today, Tony. 4-star day for you. Relate to others on an individual level when possible. Don't get pulled into a big meeting as you won't be comfortable. Maintain your sense of humor. Always good advice. Despite an unexpected response from a partner, this person might be processing his or her thoughts. Tonight, time for some fun. Important to note that, right, in our relationships with people, that sometimes people, when they're upset, they'll say things they don't really mean. And it's important to be able to tell the difference between that and actual communication. Jerry Wallace coming out of SLC. What's up, Jerry? How you doing, brother? Thank you for tuning in. 5-star day for you, Scorpio. You want to dive into work and get as much done as possible. You could get into a difficult argument that is likely to mark the next several days, if not weeks. Weigh the pros and cons of getting into a conversation that seems contentious. And tonight, Jerry, let others call the shots. And for your daughter, Sagittarius, 5-star day for her too, Jerry. Make the most of it, assuming the stars are correct. Do not underestimate the implications of a difficult matter that involves your finances. You might not expect to have a problem, or you could deny that possibility. Your creativity comes up with a solution. The unexpected occurs. And tonight, choose a fun activity. Let's see. What do we got? Carrie, Mark. What's up, Carrie? How you doing? Thank you so much for tuning in. Always love your comments, everything you share as well. And you're having a 3-star day, or so they say. Charge into your day with determination and bypass a contrary person. You still might be surprised by what this person decides to do. You are focused and all smiles. You could feel pushed by the end of the day to assess what you have accomplished. Tonight, Carrie, play it easy. Kimberly Walden, what's up? Coming at you with Libra. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, 4-star day for you, Kimberly. The best way to win a power play or battle of wills is not to play. Isn't that good advice? Bypass the situation, not by ignoring it, but by not getting involved. Expect the other party to be upset as he or she counts on you to respond to his or her innuendos. The unexpected marks your day, and tonight, be a duo. So have a great day, Kimberly. Thanks for tuning in. Josh Lamoy, looking for Aquarius, coming at you, sir. Thanks for your great comments earlier today, Josh. Good seeing you in the audience. 4-star day. You could be juggling an overwhelming amount of messages, calls, and surprise visits. I know that feeling. Trying to stay up to date with your regular demands will take talent. An unexpected event could throw you even further off base. Honor a fast change of pace. And tonight, Josh, don't fight the inevitable. Go with the flow. April Boso, thank you so much. Geofolds, thank you. Denise, chime in there. Thank you so much. Your time with us is awesome. I love knowing what you think. You are being censored, friend. God bless you, Taurus. Haha. Very, very bullheaded. Laugh out loud. Right. Thanks, Denise. I appreciate that. You know, it's easy for me to get frustrated with the lack of audience I'm able to build, but I sure am grateful for the people that do get notified about these videos, people that do show up, like you. So thank you, Denise. Dawn Becker, looking for Pisces. Thanks for tuning in, Dawn. You're having a 5-star day, or so they say. Your internal conversations might be calling for a change in how you handle your assets. You have to decide whether you are willing to deal with this issue. Just how quickly you can get a hold of yourself will be determined by your flexibility. And tonight, Dawn, mull over a decision. Chris Hardgrave, what's up, Chris? The beautiful woman with the man with the beautiful mustache. Always good to see you here. 4-star day for you, Chris. You might want to take a stand at home or at work. Do not expect a positive reception. Others are not likely to be in agreement. You could be taken aback by someone else's words or actions. Lie low and watch what takes place. Tonight, Chris, refuse to be overly assertive. Easier said than done. Tony Ramsey, thank you. Carrie Mark, thank you. Great to see you. Let's see. Denise looking for Leo. I already read that one, but I'll put it up on the screen for you, Denise. Well, I'm going through the rest of the comments here. Carrie Mark with good advice for all of us. Smile, Max. Breathe. Great advice, Carrie. Thank you so much for that. Henry gets it done mentioning Steemit. I'm on Steemit, so you can find me over there at Steemit. Let's see. If you want to find me on Steemit, I'm right over here at steemit.com at Max Mogren. Hopefully that just didn't give away all my secrets there. There we go. I made 3 cents off of my introduction video there, so I'm on the road to greatness over there at Steemit indeed. Got 50 followers, so if you want to follow me over there at Steemit, please do. If you want to support my work in a meaningful, well, I guess it's meaningful that you show up and watch the show, but if you want to support my work in a financial or economic sense, you can do so over there at patreon.com. I got 21 patrons ponying up $379 a month, which is great. Thank you all so much for your support there at patreon.com. You can also help me out over at paypal.com or paypal.me/Max Mogren. You know, I'd like to do more of these videos, but lately I've been stuck focusing on other things, just trying to pay the bills. And, you know, if I can get to the point where I'm making, you know, maybe $1,000 a month doing the show, I can do quite a bit more here. And I'll keep doing it. As long as people keep watching, anything you can do to help out definitely helps out. And Carrie Mark says, need the link for your Steemit? Sure, let me get that to you. I'm going to paste that one into the comments right now. Well, here, look at this. I can do this. This is going to be slick. There's that link right there, steemit.com at Max Mogren. So there you go. I'll paste that one in as well. Feel free to follow me over there. I need to get more active over there at Steemit. And, you know, yeah, Facebook, I don't know. We'll see what happens. You know, again, it's kind of frustrating that here we are on a page with 530,000 likes. You know, we've spent, Zachary Coons has spent 7 years building this page. I've been working with him for quite a while. And, you know, you put all this work into something and then they seem to shut it down, at least in degrees. So to all 50 of you tuned in right now, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have a lovely day. You know, we can spend all of our time trying to make sense of the world, but bottom line is it just really doesn't make that much sense. There's a lot of crazy things going on. There's a lot of shady shit going on. We all need to work within our sphere of influence to make the change, you know, to be the change that we want to see in the world. So I encourage all of you to do that, and I'll keep doing that too. Lots of great comments here. I don't know what this is about, Weldon, but I'm going to paste your comment. I'm going to end the show here and paste your comment into my search engine and see what you're talking about. So thanks for that, Weldon. I haven't heard about that, but I'm going to look into it since you mentioned it. And on that note, I'm signing off. Thank you for sending some love, Kimberly Walden. Greatly appreciate that. Denise chiming in there too. There's a new platform coming out, InfinitySN.com. I'll check that one out too. Denise, thank you so much for sharing. And all of you, thank you so much for sharing. I'm signing off for now. I'm going to do some writing today. Going to work on some projects around the house and try to make a little money and, you know, live my life to the best of my abilities in alignment with my values, with my ideals. And Chase chiming in there. I quit my corporate job 12 months ago to fight with you. Thanks, man. Chase, thank you. You know, I was tending bar. I quit doing that about 6 months ago. So far, I haven't regretted it, but, you know, it is nice having some disposable income, that's for sure. But realistically, what's the point of making and saving a bunch of money if we're living in the midst of a global depopulation agenda, right? Probably a good idea to do everything we can to band together and fight back lovingly. So keep fighting. Your boy Mog signing off for now. One love. Peace.